Stanford University.
Welcome, I'm Pauline Wiles. This is our Contemplation by Design session, More Mindful, Less Muddle. I'm really glad that you're here. I want to start with a big thank you to the staff and the volunteers of the Contemplation by Design program. They have worked incredibly hard to bring us a 10-day schedule of events, which is just wonderful, and I hope that you've got the chance to take advantage of some of the other sessions that are available. Now, we're together for just over an hour today. I'm going to keep my pace fairly brisk, and I invite you to hold your questions where possible until the end. The exception to that, if I use one of my quirky British expressions, which doesn't translate so well for you, or if you simply don't hear something that I say, then please stop me, and of course, I'll back up. Otherwise, I will keep an eye on the time, and we'll have some questions and discussion at the end. To minimize your note-taking, you can download these slides if you'd like to find them. The link is a bit.ly link, CBD-Muddle. It's also written on the boards on either side for you as well. And I've placed some extra resources for you at that page, which I hope will be helpful. By way of introduction, what does an internal muddle look like? This is me, aged around 7 or 8. I'm in my brownie uniform. I think in the UK, brownies maybe are a little older than you have here. I was a muddled and very forgetful child. I keep this photo around because it reminds me of the dreadful day when I completely forgot to attend a very important brownie meeting. Very important brownie meeting. I guess my parents weren't around to remind me. I blanked it completely, and I was later mortified when I found out what I'd done. Now, my brownie career came off the rails shortly after that. So this really was the day when I realized I had to get a grip on myself, and I had to find a way to be more organized. And I have been cheerfully curious about organizing both inside and outside ever since then. A footnote to that, when I say cheerfully curious, my husband would say annoyingly obsessive. But if you don't mind, I'll stick with cheerfully curious for today. We're here to talk about clutter. Let's take a look and see how much clutter you're carrying with yourself right now. To clarify, I'm not trying to say that it's a bad idea to always or to ever carry any of these items. Goodness knows there's times in my life when I'm very grateful for that Band-Aid and the flashlight. However, if we're not careful and if we're not mindful, then extra weight and extra clutter can definitely creep into our lives, and we find we're carrying more than we thought. So with that in mind, there are 18 items here. Did anyone find 10 or more? Does anyone care to admit to 6 or more? Does anyone care to admit to finding any? You did all find some. Okay, good job. Certainly when I put this slide together, I went through my purse and I was a little surprised and dismayed by what gets in there if we're not watchful. But our modern lives are busy, they're complicated, and before we realize it, we can be carrying all kinds of things about our person. So I said that modern life can be complicated. You might think that clutter is a fairly new concept. No, the word has in fact been around for hundreds of years. And what I find especially interesting about it is it comes from the same word that means clot. Most of us understand that a clot is a blockage that's unhealthy, possibly dangerous, definitely interfering with our flow and with our well-being. So by the 1550s, we had clutter as a verb. Not long after that, the noun, to lie around in crowded heaps, pretty much as we understand clutter today. So it's not a new problem. It's not something that grew from Silicon Valley. Clutter has been with us for hundreds of years, and it's not just our modern lives which are the problem. We all know the friend or the coworker who appears to be able to function perfectly happily and perfectly smoothly when their outside life is a complete mess. However, I'm not like that. I think many of us are not like that. And if you were drawn to this session today, I think there's a good chance that you can identify with this relationship also. That when things are disorderly on the outside, we feel that impact very much on the inside as well. And it stands to reason. If my house is such a mess that I can't find my car keys, then I'm going to be leaving late, I'm going to be flustered, I'm going to be hassled, I'll probably arrive late where I'm going, and my whole day starts to come undone. Equally, if I know I want to wear my favorite boots, maybe they're purple boots, but my closet is in such a state that I can only find one of them, the same thing applies. I'm going to be frustrated and anxious and impatient and all the stuff that starts going on up here because something was wrong on the outside. And more importantly, if we're not exercising the skill of good judgment in terms of what we allow in our life in physical belongings, then we're not building the skill of being choosy and being discerning about what we allow in here. So when you accept all kinds of clutter externally, you're probably not building the mental muscle to be mindful about your internal world as well. I'm not expecting to win Nobel Prizes with this next equation. However, if you're feeling a sense of overload, it can be helpful to look at your clutter situation in 3 distinct pieces. And this applies both for your internal mental clutter and the external stuff. Do you need to invite less into your life? Do you need some help calming down what's already there? Or is it more the case that it's time to let go of some things? So, in terms of inviting less in terms of our mental situation, that's your obligations and your commitments and your schedule and the expectations that other people place on you, the expectations we place on ourselves, all that stuff that's coming into your world. And if that's a struggle for you, one session I'd like to highlight from the Contemplation by Design program. Monday lunchtime, there's a talk on work-life integration. I've been lucky enough to hear that speaker previously, and I think you'll find loads of really great tools and resources if you feel you're struggling with what's coming in on the inner sense. For our physical clutter, things coming in, well, this is a case really of thinking about, do I need to buy less stuff? Do I need to accept fewer free things when they're offered to me at events and conferences? Could I even move toward the point where I'm comfortable owning less stuff, knowing that I really don't need very much in the way of possessions? For calming down what's there, well, this is the ideal time to seek support. I can't say enough good things about what's on the schedule of Contemplation by Design. There are so many options and opportunities and insights being offered to us these 10 days that if this feels like a struggle for you, then please enjoy. And even with your physical clutter. It's outside my scope today, but there are even a couple of tricks you can use to calm down what you have for physical belongings without actually changing the amount that you own. So think about whether just some calming of what's already in your life is needed. And then yes, letting it go, definitely. In our internal lives, that might consist of journaling, list making, creative expression, song, dance. You might talk things through with a friend. You might seek some therapy. Various means of letting go of some of what's blocking up your mental space. For physical clutter, letting stuff go is really what I want to talk about today. I recommend a 5-step process, and we'll move on to that now. Start off by assessing the space that you're interested in decluttering. Now, it might be a contained physical space, or I also use space in the sense of a category of belonging. So, for example, if you want to declutter your book collection, you might have books stored in various locations in your home or your office, but you could treat those as one item to declutter. Otherwise, your space might be your kitchen, your closet, your garage, all the usual good places. So don't make up your mind just yet on which space you would like to declutter. I am going to invite you to form an action plan before you leave today, but we'll say a bit more on choosing that space. What function does either the space or the category play for you at the moment, and how should it function? The example I like to give here, many of us perhaps own a dining table. Many of us are perhaps not using our dining table purely for dining. We're carrying out our work and our projects and our hobbies and our crafts and decoration making with the kids at the dining table. And if that bothers you, then that's an example of a function that could change after some decluttering. Think about why it isn't working in a practical sense. Is it the case that you go to your closet and it's just simply too full for you to make any sense of what's there? And then, how challenging is the space? Depending where you're starting in your decluttering journey and your previous experience with clutter, you'll find that not all spaces are equally challenging. So you might want to start with something that's fairly easy for you to get some momentum going and to make some headway. What do I mean by a challenging space? All right, so decisions per cubic foot. That's a very grand expression for saying really how dense is the stuff in there. Imagine you want to declutter your cupboard or closet where you keep linens and towels and sheets. And you go to that space and you pull out a stack of towels that are about this high. How many decisions are waiting there for you if you're going to think about decluttering these towels?
Same as the number of towels.
Yeah, however many towels fit into kind of this height. So not too many, probably 3, 4, 5 at most. On the other hand, imagine you're super excited to declutter your desk or your office, and you pull out a stack of paper to work with. How many decisions are lurking here for you now? Too many, yeah, too many, hundreds, a lot, definitely. I'm repeating what you folks say to me for the benefit of the video. So decision density is simply saying, what are you letting yourself in for? Does a fairly small looking space actually contain hundreds and hundreds of decisions? It may do. One of my favorite places to recommend people get started with is usually a bathroom cabinet. It's fairly small, and most of us are not terribly attached to our toothpaste. However, in an area like this, you do need to be aware of disposal issues. If you've got chemicals like hair dye or something in there, or medications would be a good example, you can't just donate or recycle those. So just a heads up that some areas of your home or your office, the garage is another good one, might have some disposal considerations. Talking of the garage, that is my personal least favorite place to declutter. There's something about the spiders and the cobwebs and the bugs and the critters and the dirt that gathers in the garage where, frankly, I just don't enjoy being in there and I don't want to get my hands into that. So I would just say to you, if there's a place on your radar that you're interested in decluttering and you really do not feel any wish to spend time in that place, then that makes it a more challenging space to start with. This next one, I'll get this out of the way early. At every talk I give, somebody gets very concerned about how they are going to navigate other people's clutter. And that's definitely a topic for a more advanced clutter class. But let me just suggest that you should start with your own belongings, focus on that. Usually you'd be amazed how much you can do with your own stuff before you have to worry too much about somebody else's. My husband calls me on this all the time. If I start to sort of look sideways at a pile that might be appearing at his end of the table, and I might start to insinuate that he has one too many t-shirts on his side of the closet, he's pretty quick to point out the clutter that I've allowed to accumulate. But of course, for me, it doesn't feel so much like clutter, it feels like precious treasures. So just know that you can go a long way with your own stuff. And in fact, you might be surprised what that then stimulates in the people around you. But you can definitely start close to yourself before you go wider and worry about other people. And then finally here, how emotional is the clutter? I said that we're not necessarily attached to our toothpaste. You might be, that's fine. But just know that depending on which space you're heading into to declutter, you might be surfacing more emotional and mental considerations than you realize. So I invite you now, take a moment or so, get quiet, get comfortable if that helps you. Picture the space you'd like to declutter. Take a few moments and consider what comes up for you on an emotional level from that space. These questions might help you. Feel free to close your eyes if that's useful for you. I will let you know when we're carrying on and when to come back together. And just take note of what's going on for you on an internal level as you think about some of this external clutter that you would like to deal with. Join me back when you're ready. Would anybody care to share maybe a one-word emotion or feeling that came up for you as you thought about that space?
Sentimentality.
Sentimentality?
Guilt.
Guilt?
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed?
Trapped.
Trapped?
Stressed.
Stressed?
Grief.
Grief? Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear you name these. These are perfectly common. Perhaps I look at that handbag I purchased, which was incredibly expensive, and I've used it once. I might feel guilty. Maybe I look at the gift from my father-in-law, which he thought was just wonderful, and I sadly do not agree. Maybe I'm resentful of that. Or maybe I feel anxious and frustrated that I've tried to tackle my clutter in the past and really haven't made good inroads. I worked with a client who had experienced grief. She'd lost her husband, and she'd gone shopping as a way of processing that. And then a couple of years later, she called me in as she realized that she didn't just have a closet clutter problem. She hadn't really navigated her grief. At the same time, it's worth pausing and noticing that we might feel some emotions like these. Would you give me a show of hands if you saw the keynote talk in Memorial Church from Roshi Joan Halifax? So you folks know why I have crossed out optimism and gone with hope. If you weren't at that talk, this is representing that we're showing up to do something about our clutter. We're not just sitting there and hoping that maybe it might disappear. So I might get curious about what these belongings can teach me. What mistake did I make when purchasing the expensive handbag that I'm not going to make again? I might feel enthusiastic for how I believe my dining table could function if I get rid of some stuff off it. Maybe the crafts have had their day and I'm now looking forward to hosting friends for Thanksgiving, something like that. Also, our keynote speaker reminded us of the number of refugees currently in the world. I'm pretty sure that the refugee communities are not sitting together on a Saturday afternoon discussing their clutter. So sometimes I like to pause and just remind myself that if I feel I've got a bit of a problem with having too much stuff around, then that's a sign that the universe has actually been quite kind to me. And I invite you maybe to look at your clutter and think, yeah, maybe I do have a bit too much stuff, but that's a symptom perhaps that I'm kind of lucky. Nonetheless, generally clutter is something we would like to say goodbye to. The purpose of this talk is to encourage that. So we'll move on with the assumption that, okay, clutter is a sign we're terribly lucky, but we don't necessarily want to be lucky and keep all that stuff around us. So we'll move on. And I think now you're ready, if you would like to make the first part of your action plan. Certainly not compulsory, but if you would like to set some intentions for a space that you want to declutter, we're at that stage now. You can go ahead and either take notes, send an email to yourself, or if you need something to write on, catch my eye, I'll bring you a card. Answer these two questions if you feel able now to commit to a space you want to declutter, and if you feel more prepared for any of the emotions which might come up. Again, we'll take 2 minutes or so for that.
Thank you.
Great, okay, I will continue. So step 1, I encourage you to think about the space that you are considering. Step 2, give some acknowledgement that our clutter has emotions attached to it. You're not just dealing with your stuff, but you're probably dealing with some emotions also. Step 3 then, it's time to sort. Some experts go straight for the cherry pick approach. I prefer what I think of as shake the tree. Let me tell you a bit about both of those and where you might want to use each approach. The most powerful way to convince yourself that it's okay to declutter is if you gather everything you own of one particular item together and review it as a group. So what do I mean by this? If you want to declutter your t-shirts, you would go and gather every t-shirt you own and review them in their entirety. And probably when you see them gathered together, you will think to yourself, yeah, maybe I don't need so many of these. I can let some go, and these are the ones which are the most likely candidates. I had a client, she had a lovely closet, but she liked to buy white linen shirts. White linen shirts were her thing. And when we worked together and she actually lined up all her white linen shirts in a row, she was able to see then, really, no one person needs this many white linen shirts, unless maybe it's part of a job uniform or something. She didn't need all those shirts, and she was then able to say, okay, I can let a proportion go. Same again, a client had been to a number of professional conferences. Almost every conference she went to, they presented her with a branded conference notebook. Nothing particularly nice, but nonetheless, she had dutifully brought all these back home, and there they were on her desk. And when we gathered them together, we piled up conference notebook on conference notebook. It made sense to her then that this was not something that she needed quite so many of, and she could let them go. I've used this approach on myself. Anytime I feel a tug, oh, that jacket might be okay. No, gather everything together of one kind, and it gives you a huge surge of confidence that really you can let something go. Cherry picking, on the other hand, that's what you see when an expert or an organizer walks into somebody's closet, pulls out the first shirt they come across, and they say, hey, do you need to keep this? So you don't have that same context of saying, well, it's a white linen shirt. You don't get the sense of, I don't need to keep it because I've got 8 others which are actually nicer. However, cherry picking can work really well if you do not have a lot of time for the decluttering that you're trying to undertake that day. If you only have a few minutes, but you want to feel you've made a bit of progress and selected something to get rid of, then cherry picking is fine. Also, if you get easily overwhelmed by dealing with clutter, the bringing it all together approach that I call shake the tree, that is more overwhelming than going one item at a time. And I speak from experience. If you decide you want to declutter your closet and you reach in there and you pull out everything you own and you fling it on your bed, that can feel pretty overwhelming. And believe me, the closer you are to your regular bedtime when you do that, the more overwhelmed you're going to feel. So if you've tried decluttering before and you've been very overwhelmed, maybe try the cherry picking instead. Cherry picking is also great if you don't own multiples of an item. When I walked into that dusty, dirty garage and saw the lawnmower sitting there, I hope lawnmower translates. And I knew actually the year before we'd had the yard re-landscaped and the lawn was gone and it was now deck. I was pretty clear that I could let go of the lawnmower. I didn't need to gather 6 lawnmowers together and say, do I like the red one, the green one, or the blue one? I only owned one and it was clearly obsolete. So I could clearly let that go without having to have a big debate about the matter. So do consider that sorting, shaking the tree versus cherry picking one by one. I love the sorting approach, but it is the one that might get you overwhelmed if used unwisely. That was step 3. Step 4, it's time to purge. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but the idea of decluttering is that at some point you allow some of your possessions to leave your life, so you need to purge. And to make this a little more real for you, I have brought with me today some of my own clutter, which I will invite you to assess. Now, be assured I'm not picking on you individually. I'm going to deliver these to various parts of the room, and you can very much work as groups on this. And we'll see what doubts would come up for you if you came across these items as you were embarking on a decluttering project. You feel able to look at that for me? The front row here I present with a magazine. And I'm coming back here somewhere. Am I going to stop here or back here? Show enthusiasm if you want me to stop. Otherwise, I'll save my legs and stop here. I'll present that to this general row to have a look at. All right, again, this is not a cold call. But if you found an item like that in your decluttering project, are there any doubts which would come up about getting rid of it? For the benefit of the video, our friends here are looking at a t-shirt. Any doubts come to mind?
If it was a different fabric, like one that I would say, I could maybe use the fabric in a project.
Well,
I could cut it up.
So that's one doubt. Perhaps the t-shirt could be a craft supply.
so this is not just like a regular t-shirt. This is an athletic shirt which breathes. And if you're a runner, you might need that if you do that regularly.
So again, for the video, it's not just a t-shirt, it's a breathable fabric that athletes use. Another doubt has appeared.
It's a memory.
It's a
I
memory.
worked really hard on that 5K. It was really fun. I had friends and family there with me that day.
Okay, I would like the video to record that it wasn't a 5K, it was a half marathon. Thank you very much. Was there another doubt here?
Oh, just, that it maybe holds an achievement and it's
Achievement, memory, yes. Yeah, absolutely. So yes, it's a t-shirt, but it's a t-shirt that was given out to people who ran a race last week. And I'm messing with you. Yes, it was a half marathon, but a 5K would be just as valid. Yeah, one more doubt?
No, but you said video. Are we supposed to start videotaping things we're getting rid of? Did I miss that?
Not at all. Our session is being videoed for people who can't be here.
That part.
That's why I'm repeating.
That might be a way to preserve your memory.
Well, okay, so we're coming up with solutions already, which I love. Thank you. No, the video is for the Contemplation by Design program. Yes, wonderful doubts. Okay, so yes, maybe it would be useful for something. Yes, it's a memory, it's a sentimental thing, it's an achievement. Let me give you some extra context. Okay, it was a half marathon. It was not my first half marathon, and I'm very hopeful it won't be my last. I didn't run the race in some incredible bucket list destination. This was our own beloved Redwood City. I didn't set a record in terms of the time I took. I've run faster races before, and I'm hopeful I'll do it again. So in terms of memory, it's a pretty low-grade thing. And even if it was an important bucket list race, I have perfectly good photos of me doing this event instead. So the lady in the back that said, make a video, record it digitally that you've had this experience. Yeah, photos are an ideal way of celebrating an achievement. Don't feel you have to hang on to the stuff to make the memory valid. The same goes for gifts. Imagine this had been a gift. I don't need to hang on to the thing itself to validate my feelings and my appreciation for the person who gave it to me. Whether it could be a good craft supply, yes, and a different fabric, maybe. Now, let me qualify all that. I actually quite like this t-shirt. So what I will do in reality is I'll go home and I'll pull out all my other running shirts and I'll say to myself, is there one I like less that I could get rid of? So I'll probably use the one in, one out rule with this one. I'm not saying that everything that passes into your hands must be evaluated and jettisoned. No, not at all. But you can use the one in, one out rule to just keep things under control. Now, what did I bring to this part of the group? To be clear, this is a copy of the Stanford magazine. I'm not for one moment criticizing the Stanford magazine. I think it's wonderful. And in fact, that's why I brought it, because I think you might identify with some of these doubts. Did anything come up that you would like to share?
It's out of date.
If it was a magazine that I had purchased or had ordered, I might wonder, is there some bit of information in there that I haven't read yet, that, I don't want to get rid of it until I know everything that's in it.
So we feel doubt, especially if we purchase something. Have we had full value? Have we read it thoroughly? Have we absorbed all the information? I like your point. Let's talk about that. This is a real piece of, I hesitate to call it clutter, but it is, from my own life. And the gentleman here, you rightly assessed, it's a long time out of date. Can you actually see what the date on the spine of that magazine is? May, June 2017. I haven't read it yet. You can identify. I planned to read it. I hoped to read it. I really wanted to be the kind of person that gets into bed at night and reads it. But what are we now? Almost 18 months later, I haven't read it. So I need to be honest with myself. Am I going home from talking to you lovely people today? Am I going to make my cup of tea and have my dinner and go to bed and pick up this to read? Or am I going to fall back into that cheerful and funny chick lit novel that I've been enjoying? You may have noticed I also write fiction, so I love to read, and I read widely, but sometimes I find my chick lit novels very comforting. So yeah, this is what I would call aspirational clutter. Aspirational clutter, okay, that maybe resonates with some of you. This represents the kind of person that I would dearly like to be, and I'm not quite there. So you have to say to yourself, am I going to get there? Am I going to go home tonight and leap into bed and read this 2017 issue of the Stanford magazine? Or am I going to say, actually, I'll let that go and I'll just enjoy the sense of ease that I feel from looking at the place where that stack of magazines used to be and knowing that I'm okay with that. So yes, aspirational clutter. Also the kind where if there's useful information in it that you think you want to keep, that can be a challenge for some of us as well. I'm a big proponent of could you find it somewhere else if you really needed it, and or the digital approach to saving bits and pieces, not the whole thing. Unless you have the space, of course. If it pleases you to see your bookcase full of copies of the Stanford magazine, and many people do feel that way, and it's a pleasant item to have in their home, then absolutely go for it. My definition of clutter will not be your definition of clutter. Now, I left another of my belongings back there somewhere. For the benefit of the video, it's a box. It's a Kindle box. Any doubts come up for you in thinking about decluttering that? Any doubts that somebody else would like to offer? Yes, I think a friend in the back row.
Well, I've had this exact problem. Like, can I throw this out? Like, can I recycle this? Or what part of this can I recycle? Or do I have to throw it out? Or what, how do I do it?
Right, are you keeping it because you want to return the product, or
If you want to have instructions inside.
yeah, are you keeping the instructions?
So doubts include, if I want to get rid of it, how do I do that? Can I recycle? Do I need it? Do I need the instructions? Do I need it for storage? This is the type of clutter which tries to convince us that it's important, and it really isn't. Now, actually, somebody has done a nice job designing this box. It's quite an attractive box. It feels very sturdy. It feels very important. It came with an electronic gadget in it, so it must be important, right? Well, not really. There are no instructions in here that I would be able to use if I needed them. And in any case, if I did have a question about my Kindle, I would probably get straight onto Google and ask there instead. If I were to move, I wouldn't pack my Kindle away in this box for safe transport. A few items like big flat screen TVs, they actually do well if they're put back in an original box. But for the smaller stuff, we're not going to embark on our big move project and think I must pack my Kindle back in its box. And frankly, I'm not going to sell my Kindle. And if I did, I don't know, would I get $10 for it? Would I get $15? Would having the box add more than $1 or $2 to that? I doubt it. So this is the kind of clutter that tries to seduce us into feeling that this clutter is important, and I would argue it isn't. And this leads me on to one of my favorite questions I like to ask about clutter. If I were to get rid of this, what's the worst that can happen? We'll talk more about questions, but what I want to leave you with is the notion that doubts are natural. Things that you pick up when you're trying to declutter might not be a black and white decision for you. You might feel a tug, you might feel some doubt, you might feel some what ifs. That's okay. Just know that you can navigate those. Check in with yourself. Notice what's going on. Fortunately, my Kindle box did not really bring up much emotional stuff for me. But the race t-shirt, if this had been a very meaningful experience, that might have felt more emotional. This webpage, which I have assembled for you, contains a link where you can get this document. That's a download that offers you 25 questions you can ask yourself when you're decluttering. Now, please don't stand there with your Kindle box and go through all 25. Scan through it and find the ones which really speak to you. It's interesting. Different questions do seem to resonate with different people. Find the 2 or 3 which you think, oh yes, I can use that to push myself along and give me that nudge if I need it to declutter. My favorites include that one that I just mentioned. If I get rid of this item, what's the worst that can happen? So if it's my marriage certificate, I know that I'm in a world of hurt if I should need it. If it's my Kindle box, really, what's the worst that happens? Other questions that I'm particularly fond of. So that's number 1 of my personal favorites. The second of my personal favorites, if I were to lose this item in a fire or in a flood, would I go out and buy it again? I'm not saying that we all have to pare down our belongings to those 15 or 16 items which would be first into the shopping cart at Target if we did experience a terrible loss. But just know that if you're struggling to let go of something, you can ask yourself, if I didn't have it, if I lost it, if it was damaged and destroyed, would I go out and actually replace this? And then the third question, which helps me a lot, when do I next plan to use this item again? Some experts will suggest if you haven't used something in the last 6 months or the last year that you say goodbye to it. I prefer the forward-looking approach because you know in your heart whether you have a strong intention that you need that item in your plans for your life. An example, my skis. I might not have used my skis for the last 3 years because maybe there wasn't snow at Tahoe, or maybe I hurt my knee when I was out running. But if you say to me, hey, 2019, will you be going skiing? I can say yes, absolutely. So I have a very definite plan and intention that whatever it is that's gathering dust over here will be very much needed at a point in my life that I can see clearly. But please take a look if that resource is helpful to you. Hopefully there'll be a question or two there that you can pull out and keep in your mind as you aim to declutter. And just know that your doubts are absolutely natural. That's step 4 of 5. Step 5 is the fun part. I'm assuming by this point that you've had a minor success of some kind. So maybe you've only decluttered one small drawer in your kitchen. That's okay. Acknowledge that, celebrate that success, however small it may feel, because that then will propel you on to the next thing. It's a wonderful idea, I think, if you're planning to do any form of substantial decluttering, if you nominate a small reward for yourself at the beginning of the process. By reward, I don't mean you grab your debit card and run off to Macy's. Try to come up with something a bit more nurturing, a bit more experiential as your decluttering reward. Equally, this is the time where if it's important to you for your freshly decluttered space to look attractive, this is the time when you might want to invest in new boxes or containers or bins and so on. It's a huge mistake which magazines and media and certain shops in that direction like to tempt us into, to think that we have to go out and buy boxes and containers first. That's the wrong way around. Please save your money. They are simply trying to empty your wallet at that stage of the game. Do your decluttering first, and you will have so much more of a clear idea what containers you actually need. And it's really nice at this stage to say, yay, I was successful, I got rid of some stuff. Now I know that if I buy these 3 boxes, my things will fit, and I feel good about what's there. So if you do choose to reward your space by investing in some pretty organizing supplies, this is the time to do it. That then is one mistake which I encourage people to steer clear of. What else do we have in terms of mistakes? There's a link on the resources page. I wrote a piece that highlights these, so I won't spend too long on them. But expecting decluttering to be fast and a one-off exercise might lead you into disappointment. You certainly can get great results quickly if you have a blitz approach. But for most of us, it's more of a journey. You'll do some, you'll feel some sense of achievement, and then you might return to it and do some more. Much like visiting a personal trainer, I would not go in for one session and expect a transformation in myself. Your clutter might be the same. I said that doubts are natural when you're letting go of things. Don't stifle your organizing efforts by aiming to make perfect decisions every time and have 0 regrets. Once in a while, there is the likelihood that you will declutter, let go of an item, and later you will feel some twinges of regret. It doesn't happen as often as you might think, though. And if you go into the project thinking, I must never make any wrong decisions, if in doubt I must keep something, then you'll stifle yourself. I have been enthusiastically getting rid of things for, 30 years or so, and I can tell you there is one item which I am still regretful about letting go. It was a cheap piece of costume jewelry, fairly meaningless, but really that's the only thing that has stuck with me as, yes, that was the one time I got it wrong. So you won't get it wrong as often as you might think either. What else? We've talked about other people's clutter. Yes. See what you can do with your own stuff before you get too worried about that. When you embark on a decluttering mission, if you have some idea about where you're going to donate your unwanted items, that's ideal. If you do intend to sell them, then know that you're going to have to be strict with yourself to sell them quickly and to not just simply put them in a corner because you couldn't get the price you wanted or nobody responded to your Craigslist ad, and so on and so on. Selling is great if the items are of high value, but if you're not careful, you just end up with moving your clutter to a different category and you haven't actually reduced your problem. We talked about buying containers before you begin. Oh yes, my other grievance. Magazines. The video won't be able to see this. Most of you won't be able to see this. You can come and see it later, but the chances are you've all seen pictures like this. The magazines want us to think that after we've decluttered, our pantries and our closets and our lives are going to look like this. They don't. It's not beautiful. It's completely unrealistic. It's fiction. So the magazines are selling, they need the spread to look attractive. It needs to match. The colors need to look harmonious. There needs to be a lot of white space on the page for our eye to find this attractive. I don't expect your pantry is ever going to look like that, and nor should it. So I believe as a society, and I love this magazine, there's nothing wrong with the magazine, it's just that they're not representing real life. As a society, we've become much more discerning and careful about accepting images of physical bodies and people and models. We are far more willing these days to challenge what we see in a magazine and say, hey, real people don't look like that. So I would encourage you just bring a bit of that same thinking to when you see the pictures of the closets and the pantries and so on, and just know that the magazine isn't selling real life in that sense either. All right, so if those are the mistakes, how can you boost your chances? Don't start decluttering when you're tired. Okay, your decision making won't be as sharp, and your confidence in your own abilities won't be there if you haven't been able to get some rest. When we are finished here, I am heading over to the 5 p.m. Contemplation by Design session. Dr. Alex Pang is going to talk about the power of rest. I'm looking forward to that talk. I recommend it to you. It doesn't obviously only apply to decluttering. It's important for the remainder of your life as well. Maybe this isn't your first rodeo with decluttering. Maybe you've tried it before and had mixed results, or you're not very confident about your abilities with this. Try a different approach. Try the cherry picking versus the shake the tree. Maybe the space that you embarked on really was a challenging space for you. Progress, not perfection. And I'm a big believer that decluttering is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Some of the best-selling books would tell us that there is a one-size-fits-all approach. I don't think so. So I have designed a short, free email course called Your Clutter Persona, where I aim to help guide you through some of your preferences around your belongings and around your clutter to give you a greater chance of success when you do try to declutter. So get connected with your personal preferences. The way I view my stuff and my clutter is not how each one of you will see it by any means. Take a show of hands. Has anyone completed Gretchen Rubin's quiz on the 4 tendencies? We have one person who has come across that. I'm not associated with her in any way. I find it helpful. There's a link to the quiz on that resources page. She's come up with a framework called the 4 tendencies for how we respond to expectations. And for many, many of us, to succeed with, frankly, what's an internal expectation of decluttering, we need some external accountability, and somebody like an accountability buddy can be incredibly useful. So if you're interested in finding out more, take the quiz. It's on her site. See if you might be the category of obliger. And if you are, then know that an accountability buddy would be a huge help to you. I'm still scrolling optimistically. If you would like some accountability, for the next week, I am willing to be your accountability buddy. I'll tell you in a minute how you can get in touch with me and say, hey, I plan to declutter on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Please nudge me. And I will send you an email to nudge you and say, hey, it was great to see you on Saturday. How about you get going with that decluttering? I'll tell you in a minute how to ask for that from me. Thank you. This is not scientifically proven. Okay, we're at Stanford. It's a wonderful research institution. I want to be clear, scientists have not proven a link here. However, there is a belief, particularly in folklore, that when the moon is waning, that is the best time to let go of unwanted things from our life. Now, as I say, the studies have not yet shown that that is the case, but if that idea speaks to you, and I think it's kind of fun, then by all means harness some help from the moon with your decluttering. I'm fascinated in medicine by the placebo effect, that when we think something is helping us, then it helps us. So if the moon will help you, go for it. You have about 2 more nights. The moon is doing the right thing for about 2 more nights, and then hold off until Thanksgiving if you want the waning moon on your side. Definitely build on momentum. Take those early successes. Your one tiny drawer that you decluttered, yay. You know, congratulate yourself, build on that, and please be kind to yourself. There's a quote that says, when you put your stuff in order, you're also putting your life in order. And it's very real for most of us that the possessions we have are a reflection of who we are, who we were, who we believe we can be. Here's the version of the effect that we saw earlier. When you're able to get your external space feeling decluttered and feeling calm, then I believe there is every likelihood that you'll get the benefits of mental clarity as well. The wonderful thing here is when you're looking at your clutter and you're making decisions, you're practicing the skill of being discerning and mindful about what you allow into your life as a whole. So this is a muscle that we can build. Practice on your clutter, and you may find that your mental reasoning in terms of what you want in your life altogether is improved. It's not uncommon for somebody to say, I cleaned out the fridge and now I feel I can change this and this and this in my life. The momentum is there for the taking. We're ready now for you to make part 2 of your action plan if you would like to. We've already answered questions 1 and 2, so if you're planning your action, please go ahead and look at these further questions of when, what support, will you donate, what's your reward. I reckon I can give you about 2 minutes to do that, and then I will wrap up with some final resources and we'll have time for your questions if you have any. But take a few moments now if you're making your action plan for what you want to declutter and how you'll go about that. I'm going to keep talking because I do want to allow time for your questions if you have them. Wrap up with further resources and support for you. I've already mentioned this link, CBD-Muddle, for further items which I think might be helpful to you. I said to you this week only, I'm willing to be your accountability buddy. If you write your email address and the date and time of your planned decluttering session on one of my pink butterflies, leave it with me. I will be in touch with you to give your inbox a little nudge to say, hey, how's that decluttering getting started? I can only do this for the next week because then I'm going to be in the UK, and once the time difference and jet lag hits, then all bets are off. But if you'd like a reminder, please just leave your information on a butterfly. You're not signing up there for an email list. You'll just hear from me that one time. On the other hand, if you'd like some online community and accountability, I moderate a private Facebook group. I'd love to see you there. It's called Purposeful Productivity. We don't just talk about clutter, we cover mindful goal setting, time management, and those aspects of productivity as well. So if that resonates with you, please come find us. I mentioned a free mini course delivered by email. That is launching next week, but if you sign up for it now, you'll get the first lesson there as soon as it's available. And the idea here is that you dig into your own preferences and personality with regards to your belongings and your clutter. I do talk to groups like this, as you can see. So if you represent a group who would like a session that's similar, then take a business card or shoot me a note. And you can connect with me anytime. Here's my website. That's where you'll find me if you would like further suggestions. With that, thank you, and I'm here for your questions and comments.
What if you are an inheritor of a large collection that is valuable?
So for the video, the question was, what happens if you inherit a large collection that's valuable? So you have two main decisions to make. Are you going to keep it or not keep it? And I would refer back to the idea of the gift, that your feelings for the person who bequeathed the collection are not the same as the collection itself. And the fact that it's valuable, if you can, try to place that consideration to one side as you navigate the issue of whether you're going to keep these things or not keep them. If you come down on the side of, this person meant the world to me, but I don't need to keep grandma's cuckoo clocks for posterity, then you're going to be letting go. And at that point, you can get professional advice on the best means to get rid of those items. And for all the things that we feel are important memories or sentiments, photos are a very powerful way of keeping the essence of the item and the memory without actually keeping the full-scale thing. That would be my thoughts. Yes?
And if I get rid of them, they're going into landfill, or they're going to end up in the ocean, or so it's...
Definitely. And there is a link on this page. It's not an article I wrote. I think it's a realtor or an interior designer came up with an incredible list of resources for our local area, so for Silicon Valley, of where you can actually disperse your things in a useful way. Hopefully there's something there that helps you. If not, then you might be surprised if you search online for donate and unusual item, what can be done.
I'm thinking of more like those apple boxes that are part plastic and part like cardboard and all the packaging we have that you feel like if you get rid of it, it's just going to end up in the ocean or in landfill or something. I end up keeping it because I don't want it to fit.
Yeah. So to that, I would say take a look at those 25 questions for helping you let go. I mean, you might find there's an organization I've volunteered with in the past of craft supplies for teachers. The most incredible things can be repurposed. But that said, I would say to you something like, how much is your rent or your mortgage costing you per square foot to keep those things? They're on this planet, whether they're in a space that you're paying rent or mortgage for, or whether they're somewhere else. And you know, I think it's on all of us to push back to the people making this packaging and this stuff to say, hey, actually, please consider that I would like to feel better about buying your product and what happens to it when I say goodbye.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you just take it back to wherever you bought it and tell them that you'd like it to go back to the manufacturer, distributor.
So I'll
You
repeat.
have to hear from,
I like that.
I'll repeat that. The suggestion is take it back and let them know this is not acceptable and they need to consider that. Okay. We are out of time. I will be here for a few minutes if you want to come talk with me, but in general, I'd like to let you go in case you're heading off to the 5 p.m. session. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be with you.